Okay, in this video we're going to learn about binary compounds. Binary compounds are actually the easiest of the bunch, but I always teach them last because it all relies on prefixes, and I have seen over the years that if I teach binary compounds first, it's almost impossible to get people not to shove prefixes into everything. So binary compounds are exclusively made of nonmetals, and there's only basically two nonmetals at a time. So two elements at a time. Okay. They are super easy if you know your prefixes, and it's the same prefixes we used for hydrates. Okay, so I'm gonna really quickly run through the prefixes again. 1 is mono, 2 is di, 3 is tri, 4 is tetra, 5 is penta, 6 is hexa, 7 doesn't look like a 7, sorry. 7 is hepta, 8 is octa. Okay, so the naming scheme is actually pretty easy. Okay, first you're basically you're always going to have two elements. The first element, or the first atom, let's go with element. The first element is just the name of the element. And it only gets a prefix if there is a subscript. Subscript. Okay. The second element, there's no cations or anions on this. There's no charges, which is why we use prefixes. The second element is the name of the element with the IDE ending, and there's always a subscript. Or there's always a prefix, sorry. Always a prefix. Okay. This is going to actually be really, really easy. You don't have to worry about charges. You don't have to memorize all the polyatomics for this. You just literally look at the element and then put prefixes on it if there's a subscript, or if it's the second element, there's always a prefix. So let's do some examples. You have seen some of these compounds before. Okay, so for example, CO2. If I told you to name this and you had never heard of this naming scheme, you would call this carbon dioxide. But it does follow the naming scheme. The first element is carbon. There is no subscript, so we don't give it a prefix. The second one is oxygen. We change it to an IDE ending, so oxide, and we always give it a prefix. The prefix for 2 is di, so carbon dioxide. Great. Okay. Another example, CO. This is carbon monoxide. The first element doesn't have a subscript, so it doesn't get a prefix. Oxygen becomes oxide. It always gets a prefix. The prefix is mono. If you wrote it as monoxide, I wouldn't mark it wrong, but it's almost redundant to have two vowels next to each other. It almost sounds like monoxide, so we just drop off the vowel at the end of the prefix, and it becomes monoxide. Okay. Do one more example, just make sure you got it, but these are pretty straightforward. You just blindly put prefixes on things. Okay. N2O5. The first element is nitrogen. It does have a subscript, so we're going to put a prefix on it. The prefix for 2 is di, so this is dinitrogen. And then the prefix for 5 is penta, so pentoxide. These are the easiest ones of the bunch. The problem is what I'm going to tell you is the hard part is once you've learned this, most people start shoving prefixes all over the place when you don't need them. For ionic compounds, we did not put prefixes on anything. Please don't start retroactively shoving prefixes on things. Okay, thanks.